6 people were murdered with a farming tool on a remote Bavarian homestead. Then the killer stayed. For days, someone fed the animals, lit the fire, cooked meals in the kitchen, and slept in the house alongside the bodies. When neighbors finally arrived, the mail had been piling up for a week. The chimney was still smoking. And the footprints in the snow led to the farm but never away from it. Hinterkaifeck sat about 70 kilometers north of Munich, deep in the rolling countryside of Bavaria. The name means behind Kaifeck, and the farmstead earned it. The place was isolated, bordered by forest on multiple sides, connected to the nearest village by a single dirt path. In 1922, Germany was still reeling from the aftermath of the First World War. Hyperinflation was beginning to eat the country alive. But out here, life moved slowly. Neighbors helped each other at harvest. Doors went unlocked. People trusted the silence. The farm belonged to Andreas Gruber, 63 years old, a domineering patriarch with a violent reputation and a criminal record most of his neighbors tried to forget. In 1914, Andreas had been convicted of incest with his own daughter, Victoria. He served a year in prison. Victoria served time as well. When she returned to the farm, nothing changed. She never left. She never married again. Her husband, Carl Gabriel, had been declared killed in action in France in December of 1914. His body was never recovered. Victoria had 2 children. Her daughter, Casilia, was born in 1915, during the period of the incest conviction. Her son, Joseph, was born in 1919. The paternity of both children was the subject of quiet, horrified speculation in the village. Some believed the father was Lorenz Schlittenbauer, a neighboring farmer who had courted Victoria and publicly claimed Joseph as his own. Others believed the father was Andreas. No one asked directly. No one wanted the answer. Living in the house alongside them was Andreas's wife, the elder Casilia, 72 years old. And on March 31, 1922, a new maid arrived. Her name was Maria Baumgartner. She was 44. Her sister dropped her off at the farm that afternoon. It was her first day on the job. It would also be her last. In the days before March 31st, strange things had been happening at Hinterkaifeck. Andreas found a newspaper on the property. A Munich paper. No one in the family had purchased it. No neighbor subscribed to it. It had simply appeared. Then he found the footprints. Fresh tracks in the snow, leading from the edge of the forest to the farm's machine shed. The lock on the shed had been broken. But the footprints only went in one direction. Toward the farm. There were no tracks leading back. Whoever had come out of that forest was still there. Andreas told his neighbors. One offered to lend him a gun. He declined. He went up to the attic to investigate the strange noises the family had been hearing at night. Footsteps above them in the dark. He found nothing. Or at least, he said he found nothing. One of the family's 2 house keys had gone missing. The previous maid, a woman named Crescence Rieger, had quit 6 months earlier. She told anyone who would listen that the farmhouse was haunted. She heard sounds in the attic. She felt watched. She could not stay another night. When police later questioned her, she stood by every word. On the evening of March 31st, someone killed them all. The 4 who died first were lured or led to the barn, one by one. Andreas, his wife, Victoria, and 7-year-old Casilia. Each was struck in the head with a mattock, a heavy farming tool halfway between a pickaxe and an adze. Their bodies were stacked on top of each other, then covered with hay and a wooden board. Inside the house, Maria Baumgartner was killed in her bed. She had been at the farm for only a few hours. She was struck with crosswise blows to the head and covered with her own bedsheets. 2-year-old Joseph was killed in his crib, struck once in the face. His body was covered with one of his mother's dresses. The autopsy would later reveal something that has haunted investigators for over a century. 7-year-old Kazilia did not die immediately. She survived for hours in the dark barn, pinned beneath the bodies of her family, in such pain and terror that she tore out her own hair in clumps. Bald patches on her scalp. Fistfuls of hair still clutched in her hands when they found her. And then the killer stayed. For 3, maybe 4 days, someone remained at Hinterkaifeck. They fed the livestock. They ate from the family's kitchen. They lit fires in the hearth. Neighbors passing by saw chimney smoke and thought nothing of it. Life on the farm appeared to continue. On the night of the murders, around 3 in the morning, a farmer named Simon Rieslander was traveling home along the road near Hinterkaifeck. He saw 2 figures standing at the edge of the forest. When they noticed him looking, they turned around so he could not see their faces. A day or 2 later, 2 coffee salesmen came to the farm. No one answered the door. But smoke rose from the chimney and someone had clearly been tending the animals. Then an artisan named Michael Plockel approached the house. Someone inside moved toward the window and shone a lantern directly into his eyes, blinding him so he could not see who was behind the light. The family missed church on Sunday. Victoria had been in the choir. Young Kazilia missed school on Monday. No excuse was sent. The mail kept piling up. On Tuesday, April 4th, a repairman came and found no one. That afternoon, Lorenz Schlittenbauer, the neighbor who claimed to be Joseph's father, gathered 2 other men and went to investigate. They found the barn doors locked. Inside, beneath the hay, they found the 4 bodies stacked together. What happened next raised questions that have never been answered. Schlittenbauer walked to the house, unlocked the front door without difficulty, and went inside alone. All doors had been locked. A key had been missing for days. And yet Schlittenbauer opened the door as if he had done it 100 times before. Inside, he found Maria and the baby. By the time the lead investigator arrived from Munich, the crime scene was destroyed. Dozens of people had walked through the house and barn. Some had moved the bodies. Some had cooked food in the kitchen. Fingerprints were never recovered. The autopsies confirmed blunt force trauma from the mattock in every case. Both the elder Kazilia and Victoria had also been strangled. Victoria's injuries were the worst of any victim. 9 star-shaped fractures to her skull. Her face destroyed. In criminal profiling, this level of violence against a single victim almost always indicates a deeply personal motive. Whoever did this hated Victoria specifically. The investigation that followed was massive and ultimately futile. Over 100 suspects were questioned. Robbery was ruled out immediately. A large sum of money sat untouched in the house. Nothing had been stolen. The killer had not come for valuables. The killer had come for the family. In a decision that destroyed any chance of future forensic analysis, investigators removed the heads from all 6 victims and sent them to Munich. Not for DNA testing. Not for dental records. They sent the skulls to clairvoyants, hoping psychics could divine the identity of the murderer through metaphysical examination. The results were, predictably, useless. The skulls were later lost during the Second World War. The victims were buried without their heads. They remain that way today. In 1923, the farmstead was demolished to prevent it from becoming a macabre attraction. During demolition, workers discovered the murder weapon, the mattock, hidden in the loft of the barn. It had been there the entire time. The case was officially closed in 1955. Interrogations continued sporadically until 1986, when the chief investigator retired without resolution. So who killed the family at Hinterkaifeck? The strongest suspect has always been Lorenz Schlittenbauer, the neighbor, the man who claimed Joseph as his son, the man who had courted Victoria until Andreas drove him away. At the time of the murders, Victoria was preparing to sue Schlittenbauer for child support. His own infant child from another marriage had recently died. When Schlittenbauer discovered the bodies, the men with him noted something disturbing. He was calm. Oddly, impossibly calm. He viewed the dead, handled the corpses, and showed no visible distress. He knew his way around the farm with an intimacy that went beyond neighborly familiarity. He entered the locked house alone, without hesitation, before anyone else. And no one could explain how he opened that door so easily when a key had been missing for days. His farm was only a few hundred yards from Hinterkaifeck. He knew the livestock. He knew the tools. He knew where things were kept. The family dog, a Pomeranian that was aggressive toward strangers, was found calmly tied up. It had not barked. It had not attacked. It knew the killer. The second theory is stranger and darker. Carl Gabriel, Victoria's husband, was declared dead in France in 1914. But his body was never recovered from the battlefield. After the Second World War, German prisoners of war returning from Soviet captivity reported something unsettling. They said they had been released by a German-speaking Soviet officer who claimed, unprompted, to be the Hinterkaifeck murderer. Some speculated this officer was Carl Gabriel, a man who had supposedly died 30 years earlier, returning from the dead to discover what his wife and father-in-law had become in his absence. Several of the POWs later changed their stories. The theory remains unproven but refuses to die. A third theory points to an unknown drifter, a war veteran perhaps, who had been hiding on the property for days or weeks. The footprints from the forest. The attic noises. The missing key. The unfamiliar newspaper. Someone had been living in the shadows of Hinterkaifeck before the murders began. But the killer's comfort with livestock, farm tools, and the layout of the property argues against a stranger. And the extreme violence toward Victoria argues for someone with a personal grievance. Every victim was covered after death. Hay and wood in the barn. Sheets on the bed. A dress over the baby. In behavioral analysis, this act of covering the dead often suggests guilt, shame, or an emotional connection to the victims. This was not a random act of violence. This was intimate. In 2007, students at the Fürstenfeldbruck Police Academy conducted a cold case review as an academic exercise. They analyzed all surviving evidence, interviewed what few witnesses remained, and applied modern investigative methodology to a century-old crime. When they finished, they announced that they had reached a consensus. They agreed on who murdered the Gruber family. They refused to name the person. German privacy law and respect for surviving descendants, they said, prevented disclosure. The suspect, they confirmed, was long dead. The answer may already exist, but it will likely never be spoken aloud. Hinterkaifeck was demolished over 100 years ago. The skulls were lost. The mattock was found too late. The witnesses are all dead. What remains is the image that will not leave you. Footprints in the snow, leading toward a farmhouse, with none leading back. Someone walked out of that forest and into the lives of 6 people. And whatever happened inside those walls, whatever motive drove those blows, whatever face hid behind that lantern light, it has been sealed in silence ever since. A memorial marker stands where the farm once was. Visitors still come. They leave flowers at the edge of a field in Bavaria, in a place that no longer exists, for people whose names the world almost forgot. If this case kept you up tonight, go back and watch our episode on the Flannan Isles Lighthouse Keepers. 3 men vanished from a remote Scottish island in 1900, and the clocks had stopped. Same feeling. No answers. If this story stayed with you, subscribe. I cover the cases the world forgot.